Hi everyone, it's Donna here from Succeed with Dyslexia. And this conversation is all about the parent's voice and real life lived experience. So it's great to have with me a real life parent in Caroline Smith. Hi, Caroline.
Hello, hi everybody.
Hi, Caroline, I'm just going to introduce you and then I really want to get
Yep.
going on this conversation because this is one I think a lot of our listeners will be really interested in of, yourself as a parent of a child with dyslexia. So I know that you're a fantastic blog writer, you've got expertise in marketing as well. And as I said, you are also a mum of a child with dyslexia. And that's what this conversation is about, really. So if we could get started, Caroline, and just give us an overview of the journey that you've been on with, and I know it's your daughter who has dyslexia.
So my daughter's called Phoebe and she's 10 years old now. And for a long time, I've known that there's something not quite right. As she's been growing up, I've just sort of noticed there's a few things that have sort of been brought to my attention. But that is mainly because I'm dyslexic. So I look out for it everywhere. And I was fully aware out of my 3 children, one of them's got to be dyslexic. Probably all of them will be. But I was fully aware that there could be a problem. But she started off really well at school and she luckily went to a very lovely school, which learned in a very kinesthetic way. So they did lots of playing through, learning through play. And she just had a wonderful time up until we got to year 4, where it all started to get a lot more academic, a lot more lesson-based learning, a lot more tests. And it was then that I started to notice something's really wrong. However, this was in the pandemic. And I think that was one of the major problems because we were home learning like everybody else. And I had a sort of 7-year-old. I had at the time an 8-year-old. I had a little 4-year-old as well. And I just sort of left her to get on with it, not really knowing what was going on. She didn't really know how to learn online like all the other children. And I think if that hadn't have happened, maybe we would have noticed earlier that there was a real problem. But what happened was at the beginning of this year almost, I noticed that she was getting real basic things wrong. Like she wouldn't put capital letters for people's names, if she was like writing a thank you letter or something like that, she wouldn't know where to put a comma. And I was thinking, we've done this, we've learned this. I know you've done it, in year 3 or year 2. And my middle daughter would come in and say, no, you spell it like this and you do it like this. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, there's something really wrong. So I approached the school like I do every parent's thing. I say, oh, do you think there's something wrong? Do you think there's something wrong? Just because I'm dyslexic and because I'm worried that she could be. And they're always like, no, she's fine, she's fine. And then we had the pandemic and, we haven't really known what was been going on with her. And this time I said, look, there's something really wrong. No, she's fine, she's fine. And I said, really, there's not. At this point, I then spoke to my mum. So my mum works for the British Dyslexia Association. She helps and advises other parents, and I'm lucky that I had her to go to. And I said, look, I know we thought there might be something wrong. I think there is really something wrong. Can you help me, talk to her? So she sat her down, did a few little things with her and was like, yeah, I think there is something here. So we went back to school, we spoke to the teacher again, and we said, please can we speak to the person in charge of dyslexia? Because I didn't even know who that was in the school. So luckily we managed to get through to this lady who just started. It was a new role for her. And luckily she turned out to be very good. And she took Phoebe in and did some basic diagnostic tests on her. And the conclusion was that, yes, she was dyslexic. So we're now waiting for her to have a proper assessment, which we've booked, but that's a big waiting list. So I think we're going now in the summer to have it done because, I want to have it done, but I'll talk to you about why I want to have it done later. But in terms of the help at school, I think the problem was that when she does the national tests, she just follows the line that goes up. Occasionally she might drop or go up and down, but there's no massive drop or goes really high or really low. So therefore it was never alerted through that there was a problem. And when you go back and look at the test, yeah, it does go like this, But because of that, I think she's sort of managed to slip through the net, which makes me think there must be so many other children out there that are the same like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, wow, Caroline, what a journey you've been on. And like you say, I know that you appreciate how lucky you are to have a loved one in your life who's an expert. And it makes you think about all those other families who
Yes.
don't maybe have,
No.
a family member who knows about this stuff, who've got
Yes.
concerns. And I know this is why we wanted to talk like this, to
Yes.
kind of get these ideas out for others. So how did it make you feel then as a mum, when you've got these concerns about your daughter initially, before you'd gone to, your mum and asked her about her thoughts on whether your daughter's got dyslexia? But for you as a mum, when you're going to school and they say, no, 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 it's fine. What would you have done, do you think, at that point, had you took that at face value? And also, how did it make you feel now when you look back and think, well, actually, unfortunately, they were wrong?
I think the problem is that I was diagnosed when I was 7, and that was because I could not read at all. And I still probably haven't ever read a book, which is really bad, but I've never read a book or
Well, we
never.
hear that a lot from adults with
Yeah, and
dyslexia.
I mean, I've attempted to, but I don't understand what I'm reading. I don't read at all, ever. I can skim read, I can look at pictures, I can listen to audio, but I can't read a book and then take in information and understand what I'm reading. That's the main thing. So for me, I'm really, really bad. And my major worry is that I just didn't want my children to be like me, because I've had to live with this and try and get round it in all areas of my life up until now, and I just didn't want them to have the same problems that I did. So I think if I didn't have my mum, I probably we wouldn't even know that this was a problem, and I would have kept going, oh, she's fine, she's following along the line, and we would have got to GCSEs and thought, wow, why can't she do this? So I'm really pleased that now we are taking steps in the right direction.
Yeah.
So the school are now helping in that they are trying to do more one-to-one with her, which has been great. But again, I had to really push for that. And I know a lot of schools won't do that, or you have to pay extra to do it. And in the same way, I don't really want her to do lots of one-to-one. When I grew up, I had extra maths, extra English, extra everything. And I used to hate it. And I'd have to go on a Saturday morning. I'd have to go after school. I'd have to go all the time. And I just ended up hating it even more than I already did. So I don't really want her to have to do it. However, we're just going with this 1 half-an-hour session at the moment, just to keep her on the right track. She needs to just get her English GCSE and her maths GCSE, and then we can stop doing it. Yeah. So we've tried to explain that.
It's really interesting to hear you talk like that, and because you've got dyslexia yourself, and thank you so much for sharing that, and obviously you've got your mum who's an expert herself, you were able to know what the signs are, to look for those things in your children. Like you said, you're almost expecting at least one of them to have this journey. I'm thinking from what you said then, for those who are listening to this who don't have dyslexia themselves, aren't sure, but think, hey, my child may, I think education must be part of what we do first as mums and parents and grandparents and so on. Your education's come from your own experience and your mum.
Yes.
And then anything else you've done on top of that. But how important was it, do you think, that you knew what you were talking about and you knew the language and so on when you did approach school? And obviously you continue now having those conversations.
I think it was really important.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to actually bring my mum in on the Zoom meeting with them, and to help explain that we had a real problem. I'm not very good at remembering what to say and what order, and I have to write everything out. So I'm so pleased that I had her there to help me say, what are we going to do about this? And again, she's not the worst dyslexic that you could get. I'm sure there are far worse in her class or in her year. So she, some may argue that she doesn't need lots of help. However, I can see that she does. She for the last few years, she's been reading all the Harry Potter books. So I had to turn around to her and say, how have you read all these books? They've got really hard words in them. And she just went, well, I just miss out the word if I don't understand it, and I carry on going. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I then felt awful as a parent for not recognizing that that's what she was doing. I've now realized that we've supposed to been doing homework since September, and she's supposed to bring home homework every week to do. Well, no homework comes home. I didn't realise, probably because I didn't read the email properly at the beginning of the term. And so this came out in the meeting as well. Oh, she doesn't do her homework. And I was like, well, why has nobody told me that she has to bring home a sheet of paper? So since then, they have tried to get her a folder to bring the homework home with her, but she can't remember to put the homework in the bag. And so it still doesn't come home. And so we've got it's not only just the words, it's all the organisation that's a big problem. And I think it's just going to get worse, because next year they have to move from classroom to classroom even more than they do now, with their books, with the right homework, and she won't be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a real problem.
Yeah, it's a real journey with dyslexia, isn't it? And I'm wondering if you, as brilliant as it was that you knew what you were expecting in your children because you live with it, was your experience of it exactly almost what you were looking for in your children? And when it's manifested as something slightly different, you were late to spot it in some ways. Do you think that may have been an issue?
I feel really guilty. I felt really upset about it. Because although when she was younger, in the parenting, I'll say, "Are you sure she's fine? Are you sure that is there anything that maybe think she's dyslexic?" Because remember, I'm dyslexic. I tell everybody, the teachers know I am. No, she's fine, Mrs. Smith. And I was like, "Okay, right." And my husband would be like, "She's fine. She's reading Harry Potter. What are you going on about?" And so I've just built up, "She's fine, she's fine," a bit like I'm doing with the middle child now, and a bit like the youngest child. Oh, they'll be okay, hopefully. But now I feel really guilty that I didn't realise that she was just missing out the words, that she's not been doing her homework. She's a very goody two-shoes. Nobody's told her off for not bringing her homework in. No one's told me she's not handed her homework in. So nothing's come back to me, and I just didn't think. And now I feel awful that she hasn't been doing those pieces of work. She hands things in late. She doesn't read a book. She now is not liking reading at all. So we've gone completely round circles almost. So yeah, I feel really bad.
I'm so sorry to hear that, because I know how great a mum you are. So it's a parent's experience often. We do beat ourselves up about our children, don't we? And she is still so young. She's 10 years old.
Yes.
So I know you've started tentatively to start that identification journey, and we've been looking a lot here at Succeed around the importance of that label and what it means and what it might enable for children and adults. So why is it important for you guys as a family and for you as a parent that your daughter ultimately gets the formal label, the diagnosis, if you like, of dyslexia?
I think it's really important because I want people to understand how to teach her, how to interact with her. And by her having a label of that she is dyslexic, I think it then can open some more doors to her, in that people will then have a bit of a more understanding of why she's like she is. It's not because she's naughty that she forgot her homework. It's because she's dyslexic. It's not naughty that she didn't do her reading last night because she doesn't want to, because reading all these words, they all move around the page, and she just doesn't want to do that late at night. So I think it gives people a more of an understanding as to why she's like it is. But moving forward, for things like doing GCSEs, I want her to be able to have extra time in the exams. And I also want her to look at it in a different way, in that she's very creative, and that is her strong point. She's very arty, she's very crafty, she loves sewing, she loves food, and all those sorts of things. So I want her to push her to do those. And as we know, lots of dyslexic people are inclined to do more creative things. So that is where I'm kind of trying to push her towards. But by having this dyslexic label, I think it gives her, I'm this, and I'm going to do this, and hopefully, I'm hoping it will help her. And
And I know how creative you are with your photography and so on. And so how are you open with your children about your own journey with dyslexia, Caroline? So I'm guessing then, well, for a start, you're a great role model. And then beyond that, maybe it makes it easier to have those conversations because you're able to share your experience. How did those conversations with Phoebe, play out between you as mother and daughter around dyslexia, if you're comfortable enough to share that and it's not too private?
No. I can't spell anything, and that's why I really rely on my phone and technology to help me. And so often Phoebe will say, "How do you spell this?" And I'll be like, "I don't know." And I used to be a teacher, and I remember being in the classroom, and and children would say, "How do you spell this, miss?" And I'd be thinking, "I've no idea, I don't know." And I said, "Well, let's spell it out," and I'd sort of try to get the brainier children to help them do it, and I'd learn tactics of how to do it. Now in a situation where we're at home, I'll say to my husband, "How do you spell it?" And there was a time where when I was first going out with him, he would say, "Right, well, let's break it down and let's spell it." And I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing," and it would just make me feel even worse that I couldn't spell a basic word, that I would end up thinking, I'm not going to ask him, I'll just think of a different word to change. But as the years have gone on and we've got to know each other, he knows to not say that, and he just spells it out for me, and we know what the word is. So if Phoebe asked me, I know that, but I've gone off track now. What was the question?
No, you haven't. No, I'm loving listening to it, because it's about how you deal with it as a family. And
Yes.
like I said, your lived experience now with your daughter, kind of, making her more confident and feel, and inspired about what the future holds. Like you say, you suspect she's super creative. I know you are too. And I guess getting inspired by a wonderful mom to think, there's lots of things open to me. And how do you encourage that as a mom with her?
Well, it's been actually quite difficult at school because, whether or not children know in her year if they're dyslexic or not, hardly anybody has come out to say they are dyslexic. And so therefore she sort of has gone in and sort of said, "Oh, I think I'm a bit dyslexic." And I was going, "Oh," and they obviously don't understand what it is. So I spoke to the teacher about it and I said, "Look, we need to put a good tone on this. Like, we want people to think this is amazing to be dyslexic." And they were a bit like, okay. Anyway, I sent them a video link it's like a cartoon that explains what dyslexia is. There's famous people, I'm sure you know it.
Yes, and actually we can put the link when we share this chat. I know the video you mean. Yes. We can put that link in for other parents who think, "Oh, I like the sound of that."
Yeah. So I asked them to share it in her class, which Phoebe sort of came back and said, did you tell them to do that? I said, no. I just sort of suggested maybe we should all, look at what dyslexia is, because people don't understand what it is, and maybe we should try and explain that it's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. So anyway, I think that slightly helped. I think me talking about it at home helps a lot, and I'm quite open to talking about it in all areas of my work. I'll say, I write a blog, but I don't write it. I just have voice notes that I'm constantly doing into my phone, and then I have somebody that writes it for me. I don't do any of my bills. They know that anything to do with bills and numbers and things like that, my husband will do. My husband sorts out my tax return. And so I've put in lots of things in place, and they're quite aware that the things that I'm good at are these things, and the things that I can't do, I have help for, and I work out what help I need. So we're quite open as a family, definitely, about talking about it.
And that sounds brilliant, because that, making it part, as it should be, just part of who we are, part of life. It's all the wonderful differences we have, is really what we're all trying to achieve for lots of different things, isn't it? So what would be your advice then, Caroline, to other parents listening to you talk? You've been so brilliant at taking us on that journey, really, and thank you for your honesty of sharing, some of those challenges that you've had, because as I say, this is why we wanted to talk, to make other parents think, I'm not on my own here. So what would be your advice, a parent listening to this thinking, gosh, help, I don't know what to do next?
So I think my major advice is, if you think there's something wrong and you know your child more than anyone, then just keep pushing for it. I think a lot of the times I just said, maybe she is just fine. Maybe she isn't, not like me. And as I say, I'm probably one of the worst. I have dyslexia far worse than what she has. However, there are lots of traits that I recognise in her. But my advice would be I knew there was something not quite right, and it was to just pursue it as much as I could. So I took some time speaking to the teachers. I took some time looking at her work. I then realised that things like prep and things weren't handed in, and like made me think, right, there is something wrong. And so you will know as a parent that if something's not quite right, you need to push it and push it and push it. Try and speak to your Senko at your school, and find out who it is, ask to have a meeting with them, talk to them about your child. In a lot of cases, people, will go to the Senko and they say, oh, well, I didn't know there was a problem. And you're like, well, why was nothing said? A friend of mine has an autistic child, and she went to go and speak to the Senko, and she said, yeah, I've known him, he's had a problem since reception. And the mother was like, well, why didn't you tell me anything? He's in year 4 now. And so you kind of need these other people to help you along the way, and then try and work out what you need to do. I would definitely recommend getting a dyslexic assessment done, a proper one from a proper professional who knows what they're doing, and actually getting that certificate and being able to take it into school and then explain to all your family members, this is who they are and this is what they are and this is how we can help them.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Really wise words. And we know we have international listeners here. So in UK, we call Senko Special Educational Needs Coordinator. But we know across the world, in every school, there is somebody there who is the special educational needs expert. And it's so true what you say about reaching out to them in some way. And pretty scary to hear that, like you say, the stories where the special educational needs experts thinking, maybe I already knew that, but for some reason are not talking to families.
The problem is they're very busy. A lot of them in schools here, they're not only in charge of dyslexics, but they're in charge of all the autistic children. They're in charge of children with hearing problems, people with wheelchairs, and they might also be a teacher as well that's got a class.
Yes.
So how on earth they can do it? And it all depends on the school's budget as to where they allocate the money and how they can pay this person to do that role. So some schools do it very well and some schools do not do it very well. And it just depends where you are. But that's something I've been learning about it, especially I remember even when she was little, looking around the schools, and I went to lots of schools. I think I went to about 20 when we were deciding where to move. And I would ask them, what do you do for dyslexics? And a lot of them would be like, we don't have any dyslexics here. And I was thinking, well, you obviously do. We put them on the computer over there and then they sit on a program. And I was like, what? What we do is we get the parents to come in and they sit and read with them at lunchtime. And I was like, what? And I was just thinking, this is like, this happens everywhere in all these schools. And I was just shocked at that. It hasn't really moved on since I was little. And, the thought of my Phoebe reading with a random parent and her saying she can't even read anything is awful. But I think it's really interesting. Lots of schools work in different ways and they obviously divide the classes up in different ways. We're in a village at the moment and the classes are either divided on where your birthday falls, or they test you on how academic you are. So they'll put you into classes with people that are older or younger, and it automatically creates an atmosphere of, you're the thick kid and you're the slow kid, and and it's not very nice. So really, if you're looking for schools, look at how they divide it up and look at who the Senko is. Look at, do they know their staff? What do they know about dyslexia? What do they do in that school to help? But it's really interesting.
It's really interesting and really disappointing as well from what you say. I guess one of the things as well then on the back of that, Caroline, is to be a really discerning, and I'm going to use the word customer, for when you're looking at a school, isn't it? The way you would approach lots of other things as parents, we need to be very critical and have your wish list as you're going in about what you think is important. I guess as well, and we said this earlier, because you know of what you speak, because of your experience, and you've got your mum as an expert as well, you knew a fair bit about dyslexia, but I think from what we hear a lot for those who don't, parents, and this is the first time they come across it in their own child, it's about getting educated for yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
About finding out as much as you can about what this thing called dyslexia is and how it's impacting on your child. But I absolutely love what you say about trusting your instincts as a parent, because I think we're very good as parents of thinking no, and just, and undervaluing our own opinions about our own children.
Yeah, and I think also we're just so busy, just with life in general, that that's another guilt thing. You know, I'm always so busy. I just don't have time to sit, read. I never read with her, and that's an awful thing to do. But I never read. I hate reading, and so I don't do that. And I sort of leave it to my husband almost. He's normally at work, and so therefore she doesn't read because we don't have anyone to read with her. And so that is a problem that we have got to try and get over. But there's lots of guilt.
But that's modern family life, Caroline, isn't it? Like you say, we're all super busy, and to a certain extent, you trust school that they will look after.
Exactly.
And I suppose what the message, I suppose, from this chat today, and thank you so much for being so honest with us. I know it will make a difference to others listening. Is that we still have a role with our children, even once they are in education, whether it's, as I call it, pester power, as parents, to go and pester and be a great advocate for our kids, or almost homeschooling, which I know we all did in bucket loads during the pandemic.
Yes.
But I wonder then, as we draw this conversation to a close, any closing words for our parents, or if folks want to, find out more about your wonderful work and so on?
So I run a blog. It's called simplycaroline.co.uk. So you can come over and find me there. If you want to email me, my email address is on there as well.
And we'll put a link to that as well in this chat. Yes.
I'm happy to talk about it. I think the more we talk about it and the more we get people aware about it, the better for all the dyslexics out there. So if you've got any questions at all and you would think I might be able to help, then I'm very willing to help answer.
Thank you, Caroline. And you're a brilliant mum. But I know we all beat ourselves up, don't we? It's a mum and dad's and grandparents' experience, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
But no, thank you so much, because, as I say, we wanted to do this chat because we know it'll make a difference to other parents and grandparents and so on listening to this. So thank you. The things that we've talked about, we will put in the link when we share this discussion. And thank you so much for offering if people can reach out to you as well. I'm sure you'll get folks contacting you.
That's great.
So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Well, our pleasure. And thank you for being so honest, because these conversations make a difference. Let's keep talking, isn't it?
Yes.
So that just leaves me to say thank you to all our listeners. And we hope you've got a lot from this conversation. As I say, we're so appreciative of Caroline being so honest about these issues. They mean a lot to us here at Succeed with Dyslexia. So we will say goodbye, and we'll join you again for another conversation. Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video as much as we did putting it together. Now we have some more fantastic content for you. Please feel free to click this link here and learn more about Jimmy Baldwin, the creator of a dyslexia browser Chrome extension, and what his motives were behind that. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.